fourth speaker is Mindy Keaton. It's her third speech, and let's get to the point as well. Her achievements are hobbies, hobbies, and more hobbies. The title of the speech is A Project in Stained Glass, and she's going to introduce stained glass.
As my title said, I have lots of hobbies, and one of them includes stained glass. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time and introduce each of you to some of the techniques that are used with stained glass. I wanted to cover some of the safety issues with stained glass. Of course, as working with glass, that can fracture and cause splinters, so safety glasses are always important. A fume trap is important to use as well. As you're soldering and the pieces of lead together, it does create fumes, and you want to be able to be in a well-ventilated area or use a fume trap to get them away from you. And if you're a beginner like me, if I'm soldering, I usually have the project pretty close to my face, so for safety. A clean work surface is important just because as you're breaking the glass, there are little shards, so you want to make sure you always keep that vacuumed or swept and some Band-Aids close by. When you're cutting glass, they do on the market sell cutters, and it's just a matter of putting an appropriate amount of pressure on the glass that you're cutting and following your pattern. Some cutters push and some cutters pull towards them. And the practice that you want to get is just to make sure that there's an appropriate amount of pressure on the glass cutter. You don't want to snap the glass as you're cutting, and you don't want to put too little pressure on there, because as you go to snap, it will not follow that fissure that you've created in the glass. The ways that after you've created the fissure with the cutter, there's a couple different ways to cut the glass. I usually will hold the glass in my hand with the fissure right between and just snap it. And I've never been cut doing that, because you kind of hold your knuckles out of the way and just snap it. Another way is to use a tabletop. So if you have your fissure running along the tabletop, pull the glass out to the edge and just snap it down and over. It seems fairly scary, but it tends to work fairly well. As you're cutting intricate shapes, such as a circle, I generally will cut off a big part of the glass as cut number 1. Cut number 2, I'll cut down this way and snap that piece off. Cut number 3, snap that off. Cut number 4, snap that off. Cut number 5, snap that off, and 6. Once you've done this, your edges are not really smooth. So there's a couple ways that you can sand them down. One is with a whetstone by hand. This is pretty time consuming, so you're holding your piece of glass and rubbing and rubbing and rubbing. And the less practice you are as a cutter, the more grinding you have to do, obviously. The other thing that can be done is you can purchase an electric wet grinder, and that's a lot faster to sand the pieces down. Oh, I forgot to tell about, there is also a bandsaw that can cut. It has a diamond blade on it, and it can cut glass. So cutters are actually able to cut more intricate cuts. If you think about the top of a heart, how it comes in and then goes back out, you could never cut that angle with a glass cutter by hand, but with a bandsaw, you could cut out that piece. But when you cut that, you have to remember, you have to match that from the other side, the piece that fills the top. So glass saws are, more and more people are having those, so you see windows that are more and more intricate. As far as patterns and deciding what to cut as a project, there's a couple things that people can do. There's books that can be purchased with all sorts of different types of patterns in there, from more crafty looking things to windows to sprinklers that can be put out in the yard, all sorts of different things. The The other thing that can be done is online. There's multiple patterns that are out there. I like to actually create the patterns myself. So you just get some large paper, draw it out. There's a couple things that you have to keep in mind when you're patterning for stained glass, is that you don't want a line to run all the way through your project. Because if you have a line running through your project, it's going to fold like a book. So for support, you want to have a solid piece at the top and a solid piece at the bottom, just so it breaks up that line. And then I'll generally number each of the pieces, because it's like a very large puzzle. So kids come along and take your stained glass apart, you've got to be able to put it back together. So once you've chosen your pattern, I will take crayons and I'll color in my pattern so I get an idea of what colored glass I'm looking for. And then I'm off to the glass store. And the glass store is wonderful. It has a whole bunch of little cubby holes, and in each little cubby hole, there's 50 different colors of glass and textures that are out there. There's a magazine called Delphi that has all sorts of different colors of glass in there. And basically, after you've chosen your glass, you choose your lead cane. And the lead cane comes in different types of, there's a U channel, which goes around the outside of a project. And then there's the H channel, where glass goes in each side and fills the void. And this is an example of just a clear glass project. And I brought the board that I work with. It has an angle here that's square. And you just start at one corner, put the glass in to match the pattern, add the lead, and then progress on. And then I brought also from this pattern the finished project, so you can see the colors that go into